Okay, number 7 is another problem solving inequalities that deals with fractions. Now you can solve these exactly the way that you would solve an equation that has fractions, and that is by multiplying by a common denominator. Okay, so as I look at my problem, 6/7 x minus 1/8 is less than or equal to 11/14 x minus 8/7. I want to look at the denominators, the numbers on the bottom of my fractions, and I want to find a number that 7 and 8 and 14 and 7 again would all divide into. Now, if you have a hard time finding a number, what you could do is multiply the two smaller numbers together. Like if I multiply 7 times 8, that would be 56. And then I would check to see, will 14 divide into 56? And it does. It divides evenly. So 56 is my common denominator that I'm going to use. So I would multiply every term in the problem by 56. And what will happen, I say multiply, but what I'm actually doing is kind of dividing this out. The 56 is over 1, so I could divide 7 into 56, and that would go 8 times. And what I have left, I would need to multiply 8 times 6 times x. So that gives me 48x. So I'm rid of my fraction. I would do the same thing with the next term. 8 will divide into 56 7 times. 7 times 1, which would be still this negative, I would bring down -7, is less than or equal to, now divide again, 14 will divide into 56 4 times, multiply 4 times 11 times x to give us 44x. Move to the next term, 7 will divide into 56 8 times, 8 times 8, with the negative here would be -64. Okay, now I have an inequality that looks a whole lot better. We don't have those fractions anymore. So again, I would move all of my variables to the left. So that means I would be subtracting this 44x, keep my inequality sign, bring down -64. I need to move the 7 to the right to have all the numbers on the right. So I would have to add 7 to move it over. 44 or 48x minus 44x would be 4x is less than or equal to -64 plus 7. Remember your sign rules. If you are if the signs are different, then you would be subtracting the numbers. So if I subtract, that would give me 57, but it would be negative because my higher number is a negative. Okay, the last step would be divide by 4. But do I need to flip my inequality sign? Okay, that's another thing you have to watch out for when you're solving these inequalities. Okay, we do not reverse the sign because I did not divide by a negative number. Okay, so this gives me x is less than or equal to -54 or -57 over 4. Now, if we wanted to type our answer in interval notation, if x is less than or equal to, then the less than part tells me that I would have negative infinity on the left side of my interval notation. And so x could be anything from negative infinity up to -57 over 4, but we can include that number, so we put a bracket. Parentheses around infinity always. You always want to keep your answer as an improper fraction in your answer when you type it in your interval notation. You would never want to write it as a mixed number. Now, what if I needed to graph this one? Then I would need to look at it as a mixed number. If I look at -57 over 4, if I divide 4 into 57, 4 into 5 would be a -1. Let's see what we would have. 4 into 17 would be 4. So we would have negative 14 and 1 left over, negative 14 and 1/4. So that just kind of helps me on my graph know that as I'm choosing my correct graph, let's say zeros out here, negative 14, negative 15, negative 16. Negative 14 and 1/4 would be just a little bit past negative 14. So less than means it would be shaded to the left. The or equal to part means we would have a bracket. So you would use the mixed number for purposes of finding your graph, but not for your interval notation. Keep it as improper.